Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that literally every piece of software your company relies on is just fundamentally broken.
Right. And you can't process payments, track shipments, close deals, nothing.
Exactly. And the cause isn't like a massive cyber attack or a severed underwater internet cable.
No, not at all.
It's all because a government agency decided to add a single letter to a standard administrative form.
Which sounds completely harmless on paper.
Right. Well, if you are listening to this, today is July 20th, 2026. And for thousands of IT teams operating in and around Brazil, that absolute nightmare is actually happening right now.
Yeah, it really is the ultimate butterfly effect in enterprise architecture. I mean, a localized administrative body alters a standard format by just a few keystrokes.
Damn.
Chaos.
Exactly. Suddenly, massive multinational corporations are looking at catastrophic system failures across their entire operational stack.
Okay, let's unpack this because we're looking at a stack of sources today for our deep dive regarding a shift by Brazil's Receita Federal, which is their federal revenue service.
Right. And starting today, they have officially begun assigning alphanumeric CNPJs for new business registrations.
Which is a huge deal.
Yeah, because if you aren't familiar with it, the CNPJ is the Brazilian National Tax Identifier. Historically, it has always been numbers, just numbers.
But now they're throwing letters into the mix.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive isn't to give you a coding tutorial or anything. We are after a much more fascinating, deceptively simple question. Where does this identifier actually live inside an organization's systems?
Because, as you'll see, finding it is the real problem.
Right. Reading through our research, finding this 14-character string is apparently the hardest part of the entire crisis.
Yeah, and just to set the baseline here for you listening, the existing numeric CNPJs, like the ones businesses have been using for decades to identify themselves, those remain completely valid.
Oh, okay. So if you have an old business, your number doesn't change.
Exactly. It stays the same. But the new format rolling out today fundamentally alters the expected data structure for anyone doing business with a newly registered entity.
Right, because it's a mix now.
Yeah. It keeps the traditional 14-position length, but the first 12 positions can now contain both letters and numbers. Only the final 2 verification digits are guaranteed to stay numeric.
I have to admit, my initial reaction to reading that was just total confusion. I mean, I look at my own phone and my apps update seamlessly all the time.
Right. The updates are invisible to you.
Yeah. My bank changes its interface. Web forms change their password requirements. So why is adding a few letters to a tax ID causing so much panic?
It seems like a quick fix.
Exactly. It sounds like you just, update a little box on a website to accept letters and you're good.
Yeah, well, that assumption is incredibly common. But it is entirely based on the illusion of the user interface.
The illusion.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a simple front-end validation update, but that completely ignores the reality of how these identifiers function deep underground.
Ah, okay.
This 14-character string isn't just a label on a digital piece of paper. It is a structural, load-bearing beam holding up massive interconnected databases.
Wait, I'm going to push back on that a bit. If it's literally just a tax ID, shouldn't only the accounting and fiscal departments care about this?
You'd think so.
Right. Why doesn't the finance team just run a software patch on their accounting tool, call it a day, and let the rest of the company keep working?
You're touching on a really logical theory, but, well, it's one that completely falls apart when you look at how enterprise architecture actually evolves over decades.
Okay, how so?
Well, the most fascinating part of this whole crisis is how the CNPJ morphed from a simple government registration number into something far more critical.
Right.
It became the ultimate shared business identifier. It evolved into basically the operational glue for the entire corporate ecosystem.
So when you say operational glue, you mean it moved beyond just calculating taxes?
Oh, far beyond it. Inside an enterprise, the CNPJ identifies a customer.
Okay.
It identifies a supplier. It categorizes a specific branch of a company, a distinct legal entity, a billing account, or even a payment recipient.
Wow, so it's everywhere.
It acts as a universal reconciliation key. I mean, think about a typical multinational. They might use a major CRM platform for their sales team, right?
Yeah.
And then a completely different ERP system for their global supply chain.
Right, and probably a highly customized legacy system for finance.
Exactly. And these platforms were built by completely different software vendors in different decades. They were never natively designed to talk to each other.
They all speak completely different data languages.
Exactly.
Like the sales software calls a client a lead, And the supply chain software calls that same client a distribution node.
Right, which creates a massive translation problem.
How do these sprawling systems agree that Company X in the sales dashboard is the exact same entity as Vendor X in the warehouse logistics platform?
Oh, I see. They rely on the CNPJ.
Yes. They use it as the anchor point to match records across the divide.
That makes total sense.
It sits inside the vendor master data in your ERP. It helps the CRM system logically group smaller subsidiaries under one giant parent company.
It even allows automated procurement systems to route million-dollar approvals.
It's basically the single source of truth for identity. I mean, if the sales team says, hey, we just closed a massive deal with this new company, they pass that 14-character ID down the line.
Exactly, so the billing system knows exactly who to invoice.
And the shipping system knows exactly where the product goes.
Yep. And because that identifier has been exclusively numeric since its inception, literally every single one of those systems and all the fragile integration layers connecting them have been hard-coded with a foundational assumption.
Which is that this string of characters will only ever be the digits 0 through 9.
Exactly.
So if we have established that this string of numbers is the operational glue holding all these disparate, isolated systems together, where exactly is all this glue hiding?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, because reading through the architecture breakdowns, it feels to me like discovering you need to replace all the copper wire in a century-old house.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Oh, right. You go in figuring the wire is just neatly tucked inside the walls, but then you realize over the decades, previous owners ran wires through the air vents,
Yep.
underneath the floorboards, out to the garden shed, and somehow, I don't know, wrapped it around the plumbing.
Yeah, that analogy hits the nail on the head. And just like that century-old house, the sprawl in a modern enterprise is vast and often completely undocumented.
So where do you even start looking?
Well, according to the research from Codora that we are reviewing today, there are essentially 4 main domains where this specific data field is hiding, often in plain sight.
Okay, let's break those down.
Sure. The first domain is the one we just touched on, business applications.
Right.
These are the user-facing tools, your ERPs, CRMs, vendor workflows, and customer portals.
So that's the copper wire you can actually see when you open a wall, the obvious everyday stuff.
Exactly. But then you drop down a level to the second domain, which is the technical layer. And this is where the structural integrity starts to look terrifying. We are talking about the CNPJ being embedded deep in source code, in API definitions, middleware rules, input masks, and regex patterns.
Okay, let's pause there to unpack a few of those terms for anyone listening who isn't, spending their weekends reading software documentation.
Fair enough.
A regex pattern, a regular expression that's basically a highly specific rule a developer writes to police data, right?
Yes.
Something that says, if the data entered here doesn't look exactly like this specific sequence, reject it immediately.
That is a great way to summarize it. I mean, a developer 10 to 15 years ago might have written a tiny regex rule just to save processing power.
Right.
And that rule explicitly says, inspect this incoming field. If it contains a single character that is not a number, block the entire transaction.
Wow.
And that tiny, seemingly insignificant rule might be sitting in a shared validation library that 50 different internal applications quietly rely on every single second.
One line of code from a developer who probably doesn't even work at the company anymore could take down a modern application.
Easily.
And what about middleware? You mentioned middleware rules.
Right. Think of middleware as the digital translator standing between 2 foreign diplomats.
Okay.
It takes a message from your sales software, translates the format, and hands it to your billing software.
Got it.
Now, if that translator has a rigid rule that says the CNPJ field must be translated as a mathematical integer, and suddenly it is handed a word with letters in it.
The translator doesn't know what to do.
Exactly. It just stops translating entirely.
A complete bottleneck.
Yeah.
Which brings up the third domain mentioned in the sources, reporting and analytics, your data warehouses and business intelligence dashboards.
Right.
Now, on the surface, a dashboard just displays charts. It shouldn't care if a tax ID has a letter in it, should it?
You would think so, but the blind spot here is massive.
Really?
Yeah. A financial report might not actively validate the CNPJ to see if it's real, but it might break simply because it sorts, filters, or groups the data, assuming the underlying field behaves like a number.
Oh, the mechanics of that make total sense. I mean, if I have a massive database table with 10 million rows, and I run a query that says, sort these companies by their ID from lowest to highest.
Right. The database engine mathematically knows how to order numbers.
Yeah. But the second you throw the letter B or Z into that column.
The mathematical operation is impossible. The query fails.
Oh, wow.
The executive's morning dashboard simply goes blank.
Just like that.
Or worse, the data pipeline crashes. Consider an ETL job, which stands for extract, transform, and load.
Okay.
This is the digital sorting facility that pulls raw transaction data from 50 different regional stores, cleans it up, and loads it into a central warehouse.
Right. I'm with you.
That ETL job is programmed to handle an integer. The moment it receives a text string, the entire digital sorting facility shuts down.
And I'm guessing the fourth domain is the really terrifying one. The dark, flooded basement of that old house.
Yeah. Legacy environments. This is the bedrock.
What are we talking about here?
We are talking about systems running on COBOL, massive mainframes, RPG systems, Delphi applications, and architectures that rely on fixed-width files.
No.
These are the ancient foundational systems that still silently process critical high-volume operations for major global banks, logistics companies, and manufacturers.
Let's dig into that mechanism because it is fascinating. A fixed-width file, just to clarify the mechanics for you listening, is a really old-school way of handling data.
Very old school.
Yeah, modern systems use dynamic memory. They expand to fit whatever you type. But fixed-width files expect a rigid, unchangeable block of data.
Exactly. A system expects exactly 14 characters for the ID, no spaces, no commas, just a solid block.
And the mechanism for failure there is brutal, right?
Oh, it is. Older languages like COBOL often pre-allocate memory on the mainframe based on data types.
Okay, so it carves out a physical space in the system's memory specifically for numeric digits.
Yes. It just blindly counts the bytes. It expects a mathematical number at position 12.
And if it gets a letter,
It doesn't just throw a polite error message. It can corrupt the memory allocation entirely, or cause an exception that halts a multi-million-dollar overnight processing batch dead in its tracks.
unbelievable. Okay, so if this identifier is scattered across all these distinct places, from shiny new iPad CRM dashboards down to ancient mainframe memory blocks, I think the obvious question any modern IT worker would ask is,
Why not just search for it?
exactly, why is this a crisis of discovery? I mean, if I have a massive code base, I can use advanced search tools. Can't an IT team just do a massive global Ctrl+F across their entire network for the word CNPJ, find all the instances, and just update them?
It is the single most common question IT leaders ask, and honestly, it is the biggest, most dangerous trap they can fall into.
Really?
Yeah. The industry calls it the keyword search fallacy.
The keyword search fallacy. Okay.
You are assuming the enterprise speaks one unified language. In the real world, after decades of corporate acquisitions, employee turnover, and vendor changes, the same concept goes by dozens of different aliases.
Ah, because the developer who built the database in 2005 used a completely different naming convention than the developer who built the API in 2022.
Exactly. Let's look at the specific examples uncovered in the source material. You might have a foundational database where the column was named Taxid 20 years ago.
Okay.
Then you have a modern API communicating with that database, and the new development team defined the field as tax identifier.
So a basic search for CNPJ misses both of those immediately. You've already failed to map the system.
And it goes much deeper than that. A supplier onboarding workflow might refer to the variable internally as supplier document.
Right.
A legacy file layout from the late 90s might call it new Instracal.
Wow.
A shared validation library built by a contractor uses CPF CNPJ. A financial reporting model might label it Federalid or Accompanied or simply Documento.
It's like trying to track down an international criminal who has 30 different passports. You are never going to catch them if you only ever search for their birth name.
That is exactly it. And let's take that a step further, because the absolute hardest cases to find aren't even visible fields with weird aliases.
Wait, what could be harder than that?
Hidden assumptions.
Hidden assumptions. What do you mean by that? How can code assume something without naming it?
Well, it happens when the logic of a script relies entirely on the historical format of the data, rather than the data's name.
Okay, give me an example.
Imagine a data pipeline step that automatically strips out any non-digit characters to clean the data before saving it.
Right, developers built this years ago to remove hyphens, periods, or slashes that users might accidentally type into a form.
Exactly.
Oh, I see the trap. So a new supplier types in the new alphanumeric CNPJ. Let's say it's 12AB56.
Right.
The front-end system accepts it, but then this hidden cleaning script runs in the background and silently deletes the A and the B because it thinks they were just typos or formatting errors.
Yes. It violently alters the data. It saves a mangled, incomplete string of meaningless numbers into your core
Oh,
database.
wow.
Or consider a database column strictly defined at the foundational level as a numeric type. It doesn't matter what the column is named. It's not about finding the word CNPJ. It's about finding the dependency.
You have to map how the data flows and morphs as it moves through the dark areas of the system.
Precisely.
But wait, if finding everything is so impossible, why not just build, like, a digital bridge at the front door?
What do you mean?
Well, if the new IDs have letters, couldn't a company just create a script that intercepts the new alphanumeric ID, automatically generates a fake, purely numeric 14-digit code, and passes that dummy code backward into the old legacy systems?
So they don't break.
Yeah, let the old systems chew on numbers like they want to.
That is a brilliant theoretical workaround.
But
But it is exactly the kind of Band-Aid solution that causes enterprise systems to collapse under their own weight.
okay, why doesn't it work?
Think about it. If you generate a dummy numeric ID, how do you handle legal compliance?
Oh.
Yeah. When that legacy finance system generates a highly regulated tax document or an invoice to be sent back to the government, it uses the dummy number.
And the government rejects it.
Immediately, you fail audits. Furthermore, building a reverse mapping table to remember which fake number belongs to which real alphanumeric ID introduces a massive single point of failure.
Right.
If that mapping table glitches, your entire enterprise loses its memory of who its clients actually are.
Okay, so you can't fake it. You have to process the real data,
You have to.
which means we need to look at what happens when this goes wrong. So
Mm.
what does this all mean, like, for a business on a random Tuesday when a new supplier tries to onboard?
Let's trace a very realistic multi-step failure scenario detailed in the architecture research.
Let's hear it.
A procurement manager goes to a web portal to onboard a critical new vendor. The front-end web team updated their forms last week, so the portal gladly accepts the new alphanumeric CNPJ. The manager gets a green check mark. Everything looks great on their screen.
So the human user assumes their job is done. The vendor is in.
But then, that web portal automatically sends the vendor data to the enterprise CRM. The CRM rejects the record entirely because its internal validation rule still expects digits only. So the vendor data evaporates. It never appears in the CRM.
Wow. A completely silent failure. The procurement manager thinks the vendor is in the system, but the sales and support teams pull up their software and see absolutely nothing.
Exactly. Now let's pretend the CRM was updated too.
Okay, best case scenario.
Right. It stores the vendor perfectly. But then, an automated invoicing integration tries to pass that record to an external fiscal platform to generate a legal tax document so you can buy materials.
Let me guess.
The invoicing middleware crashes because its data schema is outdated. The transaction is frozen. Now, you cannot legally pay the supplier.
And if you can't pay the supplier, they hold the shipment. If the shipment doesn't arrive, your manufacturing line halts.
And you're touching on the real danger there, which is the asynchronous nature of business. The most insidious version of this failure cascade is what architects call the overnight problem.
The overnight problem, that sounds like a ticking time bomb.
It essentially is. Your synchronous systems, the ones happening in real time while employees are at their desks clicking buttons, they might capture the new format perfectly.
Right.
But global businesses run on massive asynchronous batch jobs that happen while we are all asleep.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the alphanumeric data enters the system at 2:0 p.m. Everything looks fine. But at 2:00 a.m., a legacy COBOL batch job wakes up on a mainframe to reconcile the entire day's transactions for the bank.
And it hasn't been updated.
No. It reads millions of lines of data perfectly until it hits that one new alphanumeric record.
And then?
It hits a hard-coded numeric memory allocation, throws a fatal exception, and the entire batch job halts dead in its tracks.
So the IT operations team wakes up the next morning to millions of failed transactions, zeroed out accounts, and a massive unresolvable backlog.
Yep.
All because one letter slipped into a massive pipe designed exclusively for numbers.
Exactly. And we haven't even mentioned third-party dependencies. Your internal APIs might be perfectly updated to handle letters.
Okay.
But when you send that API payload out to your external logistics partners or your insurance vendors, they might panic and reject your data because they haven't updated their systems yet.
It is just a staggering architectural mess, and it makes it incredibly clear that telling a bunch of developers to just start updating code is a recipe for disaster.
It really is.
If you just start hacking away at validation rules without knowing where the data travels, you are flying blind in a thunderstorm. We need a map of the house before we start ripping out the copper wire.
Which brings us to the core solution presented in the sources. How do you actually build that map? You cannot rely on human memory. You cannot rely on outdated architecture diagrams from 5 years ago. You need automated, comprehensive discovery.
This proves this isn't just a developer task. It is an enterprise-wide coordination task. You need finance, operations, data engineering, and the legacy mainframe teams all operating from the exact same blueprint.
And that blueprint must reflect the system as it behaves today. The mandatory first step must be creating a reliable map of where the CNPJ is stored, validated, transformed, and exchanged.
Okay.
That is specifically where Codeora's discovery package comes into play. The research highlights it as a tool designed precisely for this kind of structural crisis.
So mechanically, how does a discovery tool actually do that? Because we just established that a simple keyword search across the network completely fails to find aliases and hidden assumptions.
A true discovery tool like Codeora goes far beyond searching for text strings.
How so?
It uses techniques like static code analysis. Instead of just reading the text of the code, it parses the code into an abstract syntax tree to understand the actual behavior and logic.
Okay, so it's reading the intent of the code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It traces the data lineage, it watches a variable enter an API, tracks how it morphs and changes names as it passes through middleware, and follows it all the way down to how it is stored in a legacy database.
Wait, so it can look at a piece of middleware, mathematically see that it is taking a variable, stripping out any alphabetical characters, and sending a mangled number to a database, and flag that specific behavior as a critical dependency.
That is exactly the mechanism. It extracts the business logic happening under the hood. It turns those scattered, undocumented assumptions into a structured knowledge base and a highly visual system map.
Wow.
It shows you the true path the data takes across the enterprise.
That is massive, because once you have that visual map, you can actually prioritize your triage. You're not just running around the building putting out fires randomly.
Exactly. You prioritize based on business risk, which is the only way to survive a systemic update. If the discovery tool maps the lineage and finds a hard-coded numeric rule in a display-only quarterly report for middle management, you label that low risk. You can fix it next month.
Makes sense.
But if the analysis finds a rigid numeric dependency in your core supplier payment workflow or your overnight banking reconciliation job,
That is mission critical. You must address the main breaker box before you worry about a burnt-out light bulb in the attic.
exactly. And that level of visibility is the absolute prerequisite to any modernization effort. You simply cannot safely update or rewrite what you do not comprehensively understand.
So, to summarize the stakes of this deep dive for you, this shift by Brazil's Receita Federal to an alphanumeric CNPJ is so much more than a simple tax update.
It really is.
It is a genuine, cascading enterprise systems crisis perfectly disguised as a minor paperwork change. It demands total system visibility over blind, reactive coding.
Whether you are an enterprise architect, an IT leader managing global systems, or just someone fascinated by the hidden mechanics of global business, the critical lesson here is that system understanding must precede action.
Absolutely.
The hidden plumbing of our digital world is far more fragile and far more interconnected than we often admit.
Which leaves us with a rather unsettling final thought for you to mull over. We have built our entire modern digital economy on these legacy foundations.
We have.
We rely on these hidden assumptions and rigid rules written decades ago. If adding a few letters to a Brazilian tax ID can threaten to bring multinational enterprise operations to a grinding halt,
Yeah.
what other seemingly permanent simple numbers in our global infrastructure like social security numbers, banking routing codes, or global shipping identifiers are actually ticking time bombs, just waiting for a minor format change to break the system all over again?
It makes you look at every standard identifier you type into a form in a completely different light.
It really does. Like realizing the single copper wire in your wall is actually tied to the foundation of the entire neighborhood. Fascinating and terrifying. Well, that is all for this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.